Inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lay.
I think it's safe to assume that if we're in this business long enough and we rent enough properties to enough tenants, eventually someone's not going to pay and we're going to have to do an eviction to get them out of the property. That just happened to my guest today. She just had her first tenant that she had to evict. Today on the podcast, I want to hear her story. I want to hear what went wrong. But more importantly, I want to see if there were any red flags that she should have picked up on and see what we can learn to make sure that we reduce our risk of this ever happening to us. Becky Tran from Port Arthur, Texas is joining us today. Becky has a great story. She's actually not buying rentals. She's building them. She's buying land and then building these properties from the ground up. So I want to spend some time talking about how she got started and what she's doing, and then we'll get into her eviction story. First, let's take a real quick break. We'll get a word in from our sponsor. We'll come back in 30 seconds, and we'll meet Becky.
Are you having a hard time finding great investment properties? Unfortunately, the best deals are rarely found locally. Successful investing begins with the right markets. Norada Real Estate provides everything you need to invest in the best deals across the U.S. Our simple, proven system will help you create real wealth and passive monthly cash flow. Get your free copy of the ultimate guide to passive real estate investing at noradarealestate.com/guide. That's NORADA realestate.com/guide.
Becky, welcome to the podcast. Why don't we kick things off talking about you for a second? Why don't you tell us how you first got started in real estate?
So I started off, doing just being a retail manager for a retail store. And then, of course, I was only in my mid-20s and figured, I need to get into a career. So got into the real estate business, did all my classes and everything like that. And from there on, it just took off really great because our market was great. So I got into the real estate business being a realtor, a real estate agent, only in sales first. And now I'm into leasing.
Awesome. And now what were you doing before you were a retail manager at your old job?
I was working in retail management.
Okay. So you didn't have any kind of training in this or any kind of experience. You basically just got your real estate license and then you started buying rental properties after that.
Correct.
Right.
Actually, not buying rental properties. We never really bought any rental properties. We started building rental properties.
Yeah. So this is interesting. So you guys would buy some land and then put a duplex on that property. Now, why would you do that instead of just buying a property that's already built?
So how we came about that was we were actually tenants before we owned anything. We were leasing a duplex. And while we were leasing there, it came to my mind, I'm thinking, there is 2 units in this duplex that we're leasing. That's a really good idea,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So by the time we leased for 3 years in order to be able to save enough to build a duplex of our own. And it came to us where, we can live in one side and basically lease out the other side and basically live for free,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Of course, you still have to pay your bills, but the other tenant would be basically paying, for your taxes and your insurance and all of that purposes.
Right. Right. And that's exactly what you did. You moved in, you got a tenant and everything was going smooth. Now, a lot of times taking that next step and buying that next property is sometimes harder than the first property. Was that your experience? Was it harder to do the second one, or was it easier because you knew how to do it?
It was actually, I want to say it was a little bit of both. It was harder to the fact where, you're having to, of course, start from the ground up and then, make sure that everything kind of goes well and make sure you find the tenant. It's easier only because you've already leased that one side before. And, being a new, I've been a realtor, but being a new leasing agent, you want to make sure you abide by all, the laws and the rules, because again, we can't forget tenants also have laws and
sure.
Of their own.
Yeah. Now let's talk about when you were building the properties. Was it difficult to find land that was buildable? Because I mean, I don't know a whole lot about land, but I know that not all land you can build on. Was it hard to find property that you could build on?
It is. So, being a duplex, you actually have to find an area that is zoned for duplexes and triplexes and fourplexes. You can't just basically find any land in a subdivision and build a duplex. It's not allowed. I'm pretty sure most states are the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And so where we're from in Texas, locally, you have to find an area that is zoned for that, particular for a duplex, triplex, or apartment building. So it was a little bit difficult, but being that I'm a real estate agent, I had access to the MLS. And then, of course, I'm building my clientele as I go throughout the years. So you meet tons of people who are kind of in the same business as real estate, and you just start to learn, things, if they're putting things for sale. And so I would have pretty much first dibs on, great land opportunities to purchase.
Sure. Now, how about getting water and sewer? Was there like city water on the street already, or did you have to put in a well?
Well, most of the time there is water, city water and sewer. It just depends on if there was already an existing home there. If there's an existing home, there's city water and sewer. If not, and the land's been vacant, you would just have to pay, to tap into the city water and sewer.
Right. So did you guys buy properties that you tore down, or were you buying vacant land?
We were buying vacant land. However, now we're actually buying properties that we are currently tearing down to build duplexes.
Okay.
So we're doing both.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the financing real quick. So I know with buying, if somebody wanted to do this, buying land is tricky. Banks don't want to lend on land. So were you financing the land, or did you use cash to pay for the land?
So I used cash to pay for the land, and then we would take that land as, part of a collateral to go get financing on construction. When we first started our duplexes, we saved up enough money to pay for it cash. And then further down the line, to start our next duplex, we took an equity loan out of the duplex that we currently live in, because I live on one side and lease the other side out. We were able to take an equity loan and build the next duplex. And then further down the line, where we're trying to build relationship with lenders, because, again, we're self-employed, and everybody who is self-employed probably knows what I'm talking about whenever they file taxes and they don't,
it makes it
try to go away around things.
Sure. Yeah. It makes it a lot easier if you have a W-2 job. When you're self-employed, the banks just don't, a lot of times know how to, or maybe they don't like that your income maybe isn't consistent. So it makes it a little bit harder. So
Correct.
So now you're getting construction loans to build the properties?
Yes. So now we're able to, instead of use our own money, we're able to get financing, but we still have to purchase the land with our own cash.
Okay. And then tell me about the construction loan. So they would give you basically a line of credit, say if it's going to cost, just for example, $100,000 to build the duplex. They give you $100,000 and then you get parts of it as you've completed the work.
Right. So the construction loan starts off as, it depends on, the term of loans that each, person qualifies for. But ours is pretty much 9 months 9 months interest only. And what we would do is do draw requests. So each stage, after framing, you could do a draw request. After roughing and plumbing, you can do a draw request. After everything's been, dried walled and sheetrocked with cabinets and, flooring, you can do another draw request.
Okay. Now, there's a lot of risk when you're building a property. When you've got the construction, there's more risk than if the property's already there and it's rented out and performing. So I imagine there's probably a higher interest rate with the construction loan.
It is. So they consider it more like a commercial loan. So yes, the rates are a little bit higher, but in the end, you can actually refinance it into another type of loan and not keep your construction loan.
Okay. So that's the plan. You build the property, you use the construction loan to build the property, and then you refi into just a regular 30-year rental property loan when it's done.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Wow, that's really good. So now, is it complicated to build a house? I mean, we talked to Jan Zacamino on episode 105, and she made it sound really simple to build a house. Is Is it simple or is it a real complicated process?
I want to say it's simple only to the fact because we've been doing it for a while, but it is complicated because you have to be there at all times. Even if you're a general contractor, you got to be on top of, the contractors who are doing the job for you. So it is complicated to where you have to babysit these contractors to make sure they're doing the correct things, make sure that, the items and the materials comes in on time. And then all, payments get issued and all of that. So it is complicated, but we enjoy it. So at the same time, we feel like in the end, there's good potential out of it.
Right. Are you following the same blueprint on every property, or are you basically building the exact same property over and over again?
No. So actually my husband, he's an architect too. So he's a builder and an architect. And we both come up with floor plans together when we're doing, and even if it's a new spec home for sale or if it's a duplex that we're keeping for ourselves.
Okay.
So each duplex that we have is a different floor plan, only just to change things up. We don't want everything to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
And then, some people want something bigger or some people want something smaller. So we have things that are 2 bedrooms, and then we have things that are 3 bedrooms.
Okay. Now, recently you had a problem with one of your tenants, and you had to go through an eviction process.
Oh, yes, nightmare of my life.
And so I want to get into this, but first we need to take a real quick break, get a word in from our sponsor, Realty Shares. We're going to come back, and I want to hear all about your eviction and what you learned, because I think that's probably the most important part, to see if there's anything we can maybe figure out that other landlords can maybe avoid. Yeah. So let's take a real quick break and we'll come back.
Not an offering of securities. Private investments are highly illiquid and risky and are not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Securities offered to accredited investors through North Capital Private Securities. Member FINRA SIPC.
So you're an investor who wants to get into real estate but don't quite have the capital. If you have $5,000 and qualify, now you can. Introducing Realty Shares, spelled REALTY shares. RealtyShares.com has demolished the walls between you and real estate investing. You no longer need billions, millions, or even tens of thousands of dollars to invest in vetted real estate assets. With Realty Shares, hundreds of people invest fractionally, reducing the cost of an initial investment. Realty Shares deals are vetted and curated by industry professionals who underwrite and perform detailed due diligence, so you don't have to source the investment opportunities yourself. It's free to sign up and browse investments. Getting set up just takes a few minutes. Then you can manage and invest straight from your phone or computer through their simple and secure online process. Ready to invest? All it takes is $5,000 to make an investment, and there are no hidden fees. If you make $200,000 a year, you may qualify. You can find out today at realtyshares.com/rental. Close to 100,000 investors nationwide are using Realty Shares, with over $60 million in principal returned to investors. The Wall Street Journal, Forbes, TechCrunch, they're all talking about them because it works. If you're already investing, you should be investing with Realty Shares. Right now, Realty Shares has a special offer for our listeners. Go today to realtyshares.com/rental for $100 towards your first investment. That's realtyshares.com, spelled REALTY shares.com/rental for $100 towards your first investment. realtyshares.com/rental. Okay, we are back. Becky, let's talk about the eviction. So what happened?
So, with me living on one side and renting the other side out, we have to be careful on who we choose as our neighbors,
Mm-hmm.
So I went by all the rules and everything, did everything the right way, had them file, do an application, which is $50 non-refundable application fee, ran their credit, verified their employment history, make sure that their income is sufficient, did everything correct.
So everything checked out. Like they had good credit, they had a job, like everything was good.
Everything was good.
Okay.
Correct. Good credit, good history. Didn't have any sort of rental history because he was a younger tenant. So, everyone has to rent and start somewhere. So I totally understand that.
Mm-hmm.
So, rule of thumb is to share with everyone, always collect a deposit. Okay. Even if you want to be nice.
So I think this is maybe important. So what happened? Did he not have the full deposit?
Right. So he asked to stretch out his deposit. Only the fact that, he's, with the cost of moving is so expensive, we collect, the deposit is 1 month's a full month's lease.
Okay.
Along with your first full month. And then if you have a pet, I charge a non-refundable pet deposit, which is $500.
Okay.
So it's a big expense for, anyone pretty much.
Right. Okay. So he didn't have the money and maybe that, so looking back on it, is that something that you wouldn't be flexible on in the future? That you would?
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely not. That should have been a red flag to me. But it was more like, okay, I understand, I understand you're young. I understand it costs a lot. Let me be nice. And yes, I will, let you, I'll divide your deposits into 3 months.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you that that's a good thing for anybody to not be flexible on, because I think if you push back, the tenant will probably find a way to get the money.
Exactly.
And if they can't, maybe that's someone you maybe don't want to rent to if they're that close to the edge. Okay, so what happened? So the tenant moved in, you worked out a payment plan with them, and did they ever pay rent?
Yeah, so the tenant moved in, paid his first month's rent along with his non-refundable pet deposit.
Okay.
And then from there on, so, our initial first meeting, I just had this weird feeling about, this conversation that I'm having with this tenant. It just doesn't feel right. Well, maybe it's just me overreacting because, women overreact all the time. So I'm just thinking maybe it's me. So I talked to my husband about it and he says, yeah, you're overreacting. He seems chill, seems cool. Well, I end up having these weird feelings about, I think he's just a bit odd. Did I make a mistake? I mean, I ran credit. Credit is good. I ran, there's no criminal background, Yeah. So then in your mind, you're thinking, you know what? A lot of times the random, you start thinking the crazy people out there have clear backgrounds. Is he one of those?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you're living next to the person. So it makes things kind of awkward. So what happened was he ends up, comes his second month lease that's due. He tells me that he's having an issue with his payment at work. And if I could help him, to push back, the lease that's about to be due for the middle of the month. So again, everyone listen, don't be nice.
Yeah.
You need to stick with what your lease says. But it was my mistake. I end up agreeing to help him and work out some sort of payment plan with him for that month. And he did not do what he was supposed to do for that month. So it took me a while to figure out, okay, should I move forward with an eviction? Because this is only the second month around and I'm not going to go another 10 months doing this.
Yeah.
So it took me a while to figure out if I wanted to evict him or not. And then, of course, living next to the dude, you're thinking, oh, gosh, he's going to be pissed off and burn your house on fire,
Right. It's funny, he's not paying you, but he's pissed off. Or, it's so, you're right. He should be afraid you're going to be pissed off. But anyway, so it was the 15th of the month that he had agreed he would pay on the 15th, but he never did.
Well, he was supposed to pay a portion on the first, which was about $500, and he never did that. So, which, half of the month came around, I'm thinking, you know what? He never even paid the portion of the month that he agreed to. So I just need to move forward with my eviction.
Yeah. And so when the next month came around, so he's now missed a whole month. Did he say anything to you? Like, hey, I'm gonna get paid, or I'm gonna pay you on a certain date. Was he communicating with you, or did he just kind of go off the grid?
Well, I didn't let him go a full month without paying.
Okay.
So he made, he made a comment saying that yes, he'll pay by the middle of the month, and I did not want to wait to the middle of the month because I've already worked out a payment plan with him, and if he wouldn't be able to at least follow by his payment plan of, landlord trying to help you, then what makes you think he's actually going to make his payment plan by middle of the month? So I went ahead and, proceeded with my eviction. And it was probably the worst thing I ever had to do. No one wants to do that. You're stressed out already. You're thinking your house is going to be burnt on fire.
Yeah. So what day did you, if you remember, what day did you actually file?
I can't remember, but I remember it was the Monday following Super Bowl because I was going to do it that weekend, Dan. And I'm thinking, gosh, I'm not at home. If he actually gets mad or for whatever reason and actually, does something damaging, I won't be home to put out the fire.
Right. So it was around like the middle of the month?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, all right. So you're out 2 weeks rent and then you filed. And I know every state has a different procedure, but is it like a 3-day notice that you have to give them?
Right. So we give them a 1-day notice and 3 days to vacate.
Okay.
And if he's one of those tenants that are holdovers where they're not vacating the time that, they're supposed to, then that's when you proceed with, filing a court eviction. But I didn't have to go that far, thank goodness.
Oh, so he just left. Did you put the notice on the door or did you have to?
No, it was a face-to-face.
Okay.
It was a face-to-face eviction notice. And I told him, I said, listen, I gave you the opportunity to stretch out your deposit and, you didn't abide by that. I gave you the opportunity to, make a partial payment for the first and you didn't do that, or give me the courtesy to tell me that you weren't going to do that. So I think it's best, that, we evict you and you find something that's more affordable for you because clearly this is not affordable.
Right.
And it's more worse when a tenant is begging you to stay than one that is like actually, yelling at you.
Right. So, and he left without any trouble when you gave him that notice?
Well, he left the time prescribed, but he, his dog pretty much chewed up the place, chewed up the blinds, left a mess. And had I got a deposit, that would have covered all the expense, but I didn't.
Right.
So that was something that I learned from.
But, it's like if he did all that damage in like a month, I mean, it's a good thing that you got him out of there. I mean, imagine what the place would have been like in a year.
Imagine, right.
Now, as far as what you learned, so I mean, obviously, like we talked about, getting a full deposit up front is probably the biggest takeaway. With screening, it seems like you did everything. I mean, I don't know if there's anything you could have done differently there. And as far as working out a payment plan, if a tenant is late and they sincerely have a problem and they're going to pay you late, would you work with a tenant in the future, or are you going to be really firm, pay or you got to go?
I think with this one, it just really got to me. So I think in the future, I'm just going to stick with the lease, with what I put on the lease. And if it's something that you can't make a payment on, then you have to think it's not your problem, it's their problem.
Right.
So you have to put your kindness to the side and say, I have bills to pay. I have a mortgage to pay. I have property taxes and insurance to pay. So if you can't pay your lease, then you need to either go on and find something something else. Right.
Wow. Well, I mean, this is a good learning experience. Things could have gone a lot worse. And I think that you're probably going to be a better landlord going forward because of this. So I think there's a silver lining in this. Well,
yeah.
Well, Becky, you are in addition to being a rental property owner, you're also a realtor. Why don't you tell us the area that you work in case anyone is looking to invest in your part of Texas?
So we are in Southeast Texas, more towards the Beaumont area. We're about 2 hours away from Houston. What drives our economy is the petrochemical refineries. We have we have Total, we have ExxonMobil, and we have Motiva, which is one of the largest petrochemical plants for the oil industry. So that's what drives our economy and what makes our market so good. And our housing market and rental market is just so strong that, you're just grateful to be in this kind of market with the economy the way it is.
And there's lots of properties that are good rentals in your area?
There is and there isn't. So we are so low in inventory that anything that comes up great as a rental property or investment property just gets snatched up.
Right.
And believe it or not, we have so much investors. And again, there's so many investors out there with cash. You just can't even believe, how many cash buyers there are out there. There's so many people. You just have to reach out to them.
Right. Well, if anyone is looking to do some investing and wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
They can email me at Becky, Becky, T as in Tom, at AmericanRealEstate.com.
Great. And we will go ahead and put your email address on our show notes page. You can find it at rentalincomepodcast.com/episode 108. Well, Becky, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Dan.